Okay, so the last video that I posted, or the video I posted a little while ago, really focused on how the lower body moves to stop slicing. And I focused a lot about how the lower body needs to move towards the target to keep the club head inside, keep the shoulders from spinning out, and then stop slicing. Now, in this video, one of the things I wanted to address is the topic of moving the shoulders. And I think if you'll do a Google search or look on YouTube or any of the golf websites, you'll see a lot of discussion about how to turn your shoulders, how to get more shoulder turn, how to maximize shoulder turn, those kinds of things. But what I'll talk about today is around how to turn your shoulders in a circle perpendicular to your spine and to maximize your game through doing so. So I think the question I guess is asked, why do you need to turn your shoulders perpendicular to your spine? Well, I think what you'll see most good players do is when they do that, you're allowed to move the body in a way that puts maximum compression on the ball with minimum compensations to hit the ball solidly and to drive it a long distance. So it would be easy to do this, to turn your shoulders in a circle, if you grip the club with both hands together. But unfortunately, as soon as you extend the right arm further down the grip, automatically from your address posture, the right shoulder will get slightly lower than the left. And at that point, you've now complicated the concept of turning your shoulders on a circle, because if we had two axes like these, it would be relatively easy. If you look down the target line and you had yourself in your address posture and you set up with your shoulders like that, that seems pretty easy to turn them in a circle. The problem is that from a face-on view, it's not an x-axis, it's a tilted axis with the shoulders. So now that we know that this is your posture and these are your shoulders, we know that the left shoulder is higher than the right. This is kind of how we set up, and I would say a lot of amateurs turn the right shoulder too flat, and what ends up happening is if you set up in your posture with the right shoulder slightly lower than the left, the right shoulder typically stays high or stays low, left shoulder stays high. And when you do that, if you have a flat shoulder turn, if your shoulders don't get in a position where they end up perpendicular to your spine, what ends up happening is that you can't have your body and your arms and your hands applying maximum pressure simultaneously. When the shoulders are flat, in order to get them to a position where you're now back in your inclination to the ball, to a good player, that's going to feel over the top. And so a good player is going to avoid at all costs doing that. So you'll see a lot of good players get in sort of this flat shoulder turn position, and they know that originally I was bent over more, and I want to get back to that 90-degree position with my shoulders, but to do that, I've got to now get over the top and keep this left shoulder really low, and it'll feel like I'm throwing the club out and over. So instead, what a lot of players do with a flat shoulder turn is to get the club to the ball, they'll push their pelvis forward and they'll lean their head back. You'll see a lot of good players, somebody like Phil Mickelson, Ricky Fowler, a lot of guys, if you drew a line on their head at address, they take their backswing, and then immediately they start to pull the head backwards. And you'll see a lot of these guys throw the club face at the very last minute. Vijay Singh and a lot of these guys, you'll see a lot of throw of the club head because now they've had to pull off the wall because they can't apply maximum pressure with their right side. They're having to slow everything down, get the arms back down in front, and then flip the club at the ball and really pop that right arm out. So how do you get your shoulders to turn in a circle and turn perpendicular to your spine? Well, if you're like me and you think the golf swing is a little more science than it is art, the essence of science is observation and classification. So we need to look for something, and we need to know what we're looking for. So if we're going to measure it at all, we have to have sort of an end goal for the shoulder turn. So if you're setting up in your golf posture, your left shoulder, which is essentially the center of your swing arc, needs to move downward and inward the exact same distance, anywhere from 7 to 9 inches, depending upon how broad you are or how narrow you are. And I put this together sort of rudimentary looking thing, that if I set this up, my left shoulder needs to get to this red dot. So if I'm setting up in this position and I know my left shoulder has got to get to that dot, I can't possibly turn my shoulders flat and I'll leave my left shoulder above the dot. If I turn my shoulders steep and don't get any inward movement at all, well, now I may be low enough, but I didn't get my shoulder turn in enough to get to that spot. So when people say shoulder turn, I think they simplify it almost too much, because typically it's a turn, it's a tilt, and it's a slight extension of the spine as well. So for players that struggle with getting their left shoulder to turn down enough, the feeling I would give you is that when you sit up in your address posture, you'll have the left shoulder slightly higher than the right. You want to watch typically people who turn their shoulders flat start to look like this, as they get to the top. Looks like water spilling out their left ear. And the reason you're doing that is because as the left shoulder starts to impede upon your face, you now still need to see the golf ball down there. So to do that, you start to cock your head to give yourself room to look at it. So I would challenge you to get your head and your eyes, the eyes down on the ball, and then feeling as though your head is more in line with your spine at address. Most folks you'll see as they start their backswing will have to start cocking their head that way. So from an address, I would start from there. And then most people who turn their shoulders too flat, the feeling that you're going to have is that, I like to think of it as that in my address position, if I took a string and tied it to my right earlobe and had it connected to my shoulder and did the same thing on this side, what I would want to feel is I would want to feel as though I'm trying to pull that string as far away from my ear as possible without cocking my head to make it closer, and feeling as though I'm letting this string or this rubber band, whatever your thought is, feel as though that one is going right into my ear, that I'm trying to shove my right shoulder into my right ear, and this left shoulder is pulling down a great deal. Because for most people, that inward movement of the arms turns the shoulders 90 degrees to start with. So thinking that you need to move your shoulders off the ball a great deal is usually a mistake. And you'll see at the top of your swing that most players will look more like this with a relatively flat shoulder turn. They need to have more of a sideward movement. That left shoulder needs to get down more. And the way to accomplish that is really to feel as though you don't turn at all. And I think some people are shocked when they see their swings on film when they feel no shoulder turn, because they're going to feel as though all they did was this. That's what they'll feel. But when they look at it on video, it's going to look like this, right in line. So for those of you that turn your shoulders too flat, the focus is whether it's right or left side. Think about how they measure to your earlobes and feel like the right shoulder gets into your right earlobe and the left shoulder's pulling down, feeling like it's going to be stretching this neck muscle with no turn. The hands moving inward, that gives you enough turn. Now, a lot of times that may not be enough because people that have a tendency to shift off the ball a tremendous amount, if they start to lower the shoulder and they get that tilt perfect, you may have turned and worked that left shoulder down just fine, but now you've moved. If I look at our red dot, so if I take my address posture and I get that shoulder to go down, but I stay in my forward flexion, I may go past the red dot because I haven't extended my spine backwards. A lot of times people that do this, you'll see a lot of across the line club heads because they'll swing sort of in, start working on the left tilt, they'll get that kicked in and they'll kick the shaft over that way. And for those folks, what they need to feel is that from this view, they need to feel the left shoulder working down, the right shoulder working up, the hands moving inward is going to get the turn going. But now if you continue to stay in your forward flexion, you're going to get out over the ball. Your head may crash into this line if you drew a line on a computer. So the feeling there is that left shoulder down, right shoulder up. And on top of that, you want to feel an extension, not really pushing all the way in with the hips necessarily, but it's more of just an extension of the spine that you're sort of just leaning back a little bit. And that will a lot of times take that cross line position and straighten it back out, because if we get to the top and we're down, shoulders down, right shoulders up, but you're too far back, you're too far this way, even though you've got the spine perpendicular, everything's just right, from that position, all you got to do is just extend up a little bit, and bang, you're in the center position. So for shoulder turn, know that it's 3 components, and as you watch your swing, measure it. Find a way to measure it. Set up with your computer, your V1 software, whatever it is. Draw a dot, essentially right where your shirt tag comes together here, right below the last button. That's pretty close for most people. You draw a red dot right there, and then measure, does my shoulder go down and in enough? If it's not far enough down, it's this move. If it's not far enough in, you're not getting enough shoulder turn. The hands might not be working in enough. And if you go past the dot, it's extension. You need to feel that the spine actually extends to stay in that spot. So, hope that helps. Next video we'll work on the weight shift, and again more focus on the lower body along with a couple of components that get mismatched in the golf swing, and we'll cover off on a couple of those.